When the girl woke up, she couldn't understand what it all meant. She had a headache and her clothes were lying around the bed, and looking around she realized that she was in the guest bedroom, and at that moment she realized that something had happened. The Galios Empire, which made all of its profits on arms, the Rottweiler family, and she, Lysiana Rottweiler, the youngest child of the family, were given a wonderful evening yesterday to celebrate her 20th birthday. The people corresponding to the status of their family, the cheerful celebration, the happy laughter from every corner, even the flowers in the night garden, all this made the holiday unforgettable for her. The greetings of her parents, who even allowed her to drink, since she was already quite an adult, her brother, who asked her not to drink too much, and even the prince himself, who wanted to drink with her, was also there, as was an old childhood friend, Duke Doberman. That day, everyone offered her alcohol, and only her brother talked her out of it. But the girl didn't intend to stop, assuring him that he was only angry because he was still young and couldn't drink. And this went on for almost the entire evening, and the heroine was almost drunk when one guy asked her to dance, which she agreed to without hesitation. The heroine began to recall the events of that day. After that, they started dancing. But for some reason, she couldn't remember who her last partner was. She couldn't even remember his face. He was tall and stronger than she thought at first, and she kissed this man. And then they moved to the bedroom, where the man swore love until the morning. Now, being naked, she felt incredibly annoyed, and in a moment she started screaming. It looked like she hit her head. Others came up to her screams, and when all the relatives opened the door, they saw her. First of all, asking what she was doing in the guest room. The mother wanted to know what had happened, but after a moment of realizing the whole situation, she asked how much longer she would have to worry about her, to which the heroine quietly apologized, and in response, the woman angrily asked what would happen if she did not forgive her. She had told her daughter to control herself when she communicated with strangers. As a lady from an aristocratic family, she should be able to control herself. She repeated it more than once. She gave her freedom for just one evening, and this is what she got. The shamed heroine did not know what to say, and then the woman began to get angry at this neglect, and in a minute she addressed her by her full name, indicating with her whole appearance that there was no need to hide anything now. Coming closer, she stated that this situation had crossed the line. She had left last night and had not told anyone, and that is why the woman demanded an answer at the moment. The brother tried his best to calm the mother down, but she simply asked who had done this to her, and being embarrassed by these words, the heroine shouted that this was the problem, as she did not remember it at all. Later, she got to her room, and still couldn't believe that this situation was true. It all seemed like some kind of madness. When she said she wanted to be free, the heroine didn't mean expulsion from social circles. She promised that she would try to behave more modestly after she became an adult. She personally promised her mother, and now she couldn't understand how this could have happened at all, and when she took a wrong turn. No matter how much she thought, she still couldn't figure out who it was, but after a moment of hard reflection, she accepted that she didn't remember anything, and decided that she should accept the truth, that it wasn't so bad. The chest was hard and muscular. She didn't remember the face or the voice, but they seemed familiar. Suddenly, she had an attack of shame, as she had forgotten the most important thing. But for some reason, she remembered such trifles, and after calming down a bit, the aristocrat decided to cut off those who were definitely not suitable, because she couldn't just walk up and ask to see their bodies. Back then, she only talked to her peers. Her brother's friends were there, and at the end, she was probably with her brother, so there were 3 suspects in total. The first was Crown Prince Theron Kuhn 15 years ago. She came out, and he showed interest in her then. Her father never saw sincerity in him, and so he asked her to be careful, because the prince was always too nice. Now the girl realized with horror that she could have been drunk and fallen for this pretense, which frightened her, because she had never liked the prince. And that cold look, no matter how drunk she was then, he would not have been able to seduce her, and he was too discreet about his true feelings, and they only saw each other at banquets, and he was so careful that she could tell everyone about his secrets. The second possible candidate was Duke Grey Doberman. He was her childhood friend, and a very ordinary guy. They had been together since they were young, and so they were quite close. but there was not even the slightest spark between them, and they had known each other almost since birth, and so they had gone through many problems together, except that whenever they tried to expose him, he always dumped her and ran away on his own. And now the girl remembered that they had a lot of problems before, and at that moment she realized that he was really very quiet and fast, so he could disappear without leaving a trace. But still, the heroine was not sure if her friend could call her in that sweet voice, and just remembering it gave her goosebumps. She didn't want to believe it, because they were just friends, and if not these two, then there was only one option, namely Evan. He was the person who saved her in a dark alley when some bandits attacked her with the intention of robbing her, and this guy intervened and beat the attackers. The girl still didn't know why he saved her then, but after that happened, he was treated like an aristocrat in their family, and that's why he got an invitation to the evening, and she was the only one he was so close to. But the heroine understood that he was a commoner, and so she would never allow him to accompany her. The guy was and remained like a younger brother to her. Even when he was drunk, she would not have been able to see him as a man, and in the end she came back to where she started, but she could not give up, and she had to think about who it could be and why they did this. But whoever this person was, he dared to leave her and run away, and therefore it was worth trying to find him. This made the girl angry, because he was her first, but for some reason he dared to leave her just like that, and someone must pay for it. She was sure that she would punish him first, and then her father would do it. After calming down a bit, she realized that he would not appear before her if she just stayed guessing, and so she decided to act. So she dressed warmly and decided to start with the main suspect, and now she should go to him. After some traveling, she took a carriage to the right place. The heroine learned something from the mercenaries who attended the dinner, and realized that first of all, it was necessary to check Gray, and they would probably be the easiest to deal with. At the entrance, she was met by a butler who immediately bowed politely. The girl first of all asked if the boyfriend was inside because they had something to talk about. The man, in turn, assured her that he himself wanted to contact her because Madame wanted to see her. This statement surprised the heroine, as she could not even guess why. For the first time, it was that the Duchess of Rottweiler called her for a personal meeting. The man accompanied the girl to the right room, where a woman was already sitting waiting for her. After exchanging greetings, the hostess asked the guests to sit down first, and after she did so, the woman asked how the evening was going, and the girl assured her that everything was fun. The heroine began to get nervous at this unexpectedness, and the woman put down her cup of tea and assured her that she had asked for a personal meeting because of her closeness to Gray, and therefore she needed to tell her something important if they were already so closely connected. Then the girl realized that it would probably be about yesterday's celebration, but she could not even guess what this woman wanted to tell her, and why the urgency, whether it was really him yesterday, and if the Duchess was the first to know about it. She could say that the heroine was not suitable for him. She was scared because she did not know what to do next. Meanwhile, the hostess began to explain that Gray, who left this morning, was ordered by the Emperor to travel the entire country with him, and she would have to visit even the smallest lands, so this journey would take 3 years. And to be honest, he was supposed to leave the day before yesterday. But the boy decided that he had to appear at her ceremony, and so he decided to leave only today together. It turned out that the heroine would be able to see Gray and the prince only in 3 years. She couldn't believe how this happened, but she had to keep her temper in check and not show too much emotion. So she said that being an escort for the prince was a real honor, but then the Duchess wouldn't be able to see him for 3 years either, and so she would probably miss him. The woman confirmed this, adding that if she was already divorced from her son, she would be very happy to see the heroine, and therefore should come more often. The girl agreed, assuring that if she was asked, she would come any day. Going back, the heroine could not understand why, but for some reason she was confused when she heard about those 3 years, whoever that man was. But they made a mistake, and it was sad to realize that, because it was not the first night she dreamed of, he addressed her gently and said words of love. So why did he leave her then? Later, their whole family gathered for dinner, but for some reason the girl did not eat at all, and so her mother asked why. Because she loved what they had prepared today. She did not understand what was wrong. She liked everything, but for some reason, just looking at the food made her feel sick. Suddenly she felt sick, and she left the room in a hurry. And when she got to the bathroom, she felt dizzy, and everything around her was swimming. It looked like she was sick after yesterday's meal. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, in which an excited voice asked if the girl was okay. Since she left them so suddenly, the voice introduced herself as her mother and asked to open the door. And the heroine realized that she should ask for medicine. But if she was right, she was in big trouble. Not reaching the door, she fainted right there. She woke up in her room and saw her whole family in front of her, including the doctor. And when she saw her mother crying, she asked what was wrong, because she was in the bathroom, and her father came over and asked her how long she was going to keep it a secret, because she knew best about her condition. So why did she have to keep it a secret? The daughter sincerely did not understand what he was talking about and asked him to explain everything. The man looked at her angrily and then shouted that she was an unmarried lady, almost a child, and already pregnant, so she should say something in her defense. The father briefly stated that he wanted her to get rid of him, a statement that shocked the girl, but she resolutely refused, which made the man even angrier. And the young mother claimed that this was her child, and even if he had no father, he would still be hers, and therefore she intended to raise him no matter what. The man only asked what kind of child she could raise, because she was not yet ready for the consequences. An unmarried lady with a child, what she was going to do, and whether she had any ideas. The daughter sadly agreed, assuring him that he was absolutely right, and that it was not allowed for an unmarried woman in social circles to have a child, and when people found out about it, she would be laughed at. But in the end, she had to say something to him. The man assured her that he did not even want to hear anything, to which his brother asked him to calm down and let her say everything. And when he turned to leave, the girl addressed him by his status, called him a marquis, and assured him that she had something to say, namely the arms business they had discussed. She wanted to start managing it. The heroine went on to explain that her brother wanted to go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and last year he said that his daughter could not do business there because she was immature. But now everything was different. She was the daughter of the Rottweiler family and had the title of heiress. The father knew very well that she had good relations with mercenaries, and obviously she was familiar with weapons. The girl knew that he was worried about the small variety of their goods, and so she would make a new product. And in fact, she already had an idea. This weapon would be more accurate and compact than previous models. And that is why she was now asking to be allowed to raise the child, and to consider her not a mother without a husband, but the creator of a new weapon. The young mother pleaded with him, as it was impossible to simply pretend that this child had never existed. And after some thought, the father said that he thought she had only one wind in her head, but she was capable of sound reasoning, but he was still against it, and so he asked her to bring him sketches of a new product to begin with. They might not create it right away, but they would consider it, and then decide whether it was possible. The man assured her that if she proved herself worthy, she would get the family business and a job. He would present her as a business person. But people were still ruthless. They would still see her as a lonely mother, and if she did not find a father, she would be alone for the rest of her life, to which the heroine assured him that she promised that everything would be fine. The owner assured her that he understood her, but in the end, she had to understand that the problem arose because of her carelessness, and therefore they would not persistently look for the child's father. And the young mother assured her that she should not worry, and that she was the only one responsible for what happened. A few months passed, and one day when the heroine was walking, she heard someone screaming, someone calling her sister, and she turned around and saw Evan, who asked what had happened, since he hadn't seen her for a long time. As he came closer, he claimed that she had no idea how long he had been looking for her. Everyone said she was busy with some new product, but he assumed there was another reason. And as he got closer, the guy suggested that they sit down and talk a little bit. Realizing the whole situation, the guy was not upset at all, but only smiled lightly and asked if it would be a son or a daughter, to which she suggested he guess, and after a little thought, the friend assured him that it would be good if a girl was born. If it turned out that she looked like her, a real fuss would be made, but if it was a boy, everything would be quiet and calm. Demonstratively turning away, the heroine asked why she should be like him and why he was talking about this noise, or was he still hinting that she was a lot of trouble? all of which were unfounded accusations, and it was very insolent of him. After thinking about all the words, the guy got closer and asked her why she thought so. He would be happy if it was his child, to which the girl said that he was still a child, but why he said that did not give her peace of mind, and he just noticed that she could not see him as a man. After a moment, the girl said that it was too much, and Evan asked why and what he had done, or if she didn't think he would make a good father at all. The heroine realized that if she wasn't the daughter of the Marquis, she could really see him as a good father. But he couldn't be the father of her child. Suddenly, she heard the baby beating inside, and so she assured him that he should become better for his future child. Exhaling heavily, Evan took her hand and asked when he would be good enough for her, when he would become a man who could take all the responsibility. At which point he kissed her hand and asked if in that case she would marry him. This statement confused the aristocrat, and she claimed that he must be crazy, so she asked him to stop joking, to which he said that it was no joke to him. Still holding her hand, he asked her to agree, because he would be a good father for the unborn child. For a moment, the gift of the thing took away from her, but she gathered herself and said that she did not understand what he was thinking right now, because the guy was a commoner, and she was the daughter of a marquis, and therefore nothing could work out between them. Realizing that his status was to blame, he asked if he would get the title and if the heroine would agree to it. This statement shocked her even more, and she asked what he meant, because it was not possible. He stood up and said that if that was her last answer, he would try, and until he got the title, the guy asked her not to marry another man, and he said that he already had one and had to go. In the end, she had to leave herself, because they would be worried about her if she stayed here. And since she already had a child, she should take care of herself, and he would leave for now. 5 years passed. The woman was calling for someone called Adele. She was looking for her everywhere, and she was afraid that nothing would happen. And in a moment, she saw a child playing with a man, calling him grandfather, and when they met eyes, they went to hug. The mother asked why the girl was here, because she was very scared when her daughter ran away, and the girl assured her that she was playing with her grandfather. And then the woman explained that even so, she should warn her mother so that she would not worry, and next time she should tell her. The woman looked at the child with love. It was Adelweiss, her only daughter. No one knew exactly how much had happened before her birth. Evan's words about getting the title were not a joke, and he went to war of his own free will. And as for the 3-year journey of Prince and Grey, despite expectations, they still hadn't returned. They had been gone for 5 years, and the longer Prince and Grey were gone, the harder it was to figure out which of them was the father. And in the end, she was left alone when the girl was born, and her father wanted Adele to live as a boy until her father appeared. Usually sons became heirs, not daughters, and if she, already known as a reclusive mother, gave birth to a daughter, she would not be able to protect her and herself from the evil gaze of people, and so it was worth waiting for Prince and Grey to return. Until then, Adele could not be allowed to go out into this world. The aristocracy believed that she was in poor health, but she was still an heiress of the Rottweiler family. Her mother was of course worried that it was her fault that her daughter did not know about the wonderful things that were hidden outside their estate, but she was sure that she would find her father no matter what it took. Suddenly, the butler came running to them to deliver an urgent letter to the master, and the master began to frown upon reading it, and the heroine began to worry, seeing her father like that, and so she asked what was going on, and whether something serious had happened. And so the man said that it was about his best friend, Duke Doberman, who had passed away, and the letter said that it had happened yesterday. There was also something else that concerned the woman personally, namely, that they would be back soon. She had been waiting for them for so long. Prince and Grey would finally be home, and the woman realized this and frowned seriously. Her hands began to shake. The aristocrat asked when she could meet them, and her father assured her that they had to return to the hunting tour, which was not long away, and so they had to wait a little longer. The child noticed that something was wrong with her mother, so she asked what was wrong, and the woman, in turn, in order not to scare the girl, assured her that everything was fine. But now they should go eat, now they could start over, and she waited, and it was time to resume the search. The hunting tour is a very important event for the imperial family, and there was one feature, namely that the participants were given the opportunity to use new weapons that were received by the imperial family. And so the competition was a great chance to get acquainted with new models of weapons. The woman chose Grande, which was developed 5 years ago to protect Adele, and Ethical, which was created last month, as a great opportunity to show the effectiveness of the weapon. Her preparations were complete, and now she had the opportunity to look at the other participants, when suddenly she heard a familiar voice call her name. And turning around, she saw the prince, who was interested in how she had been doing all this time. The heroine was not confused and greeted him formally as required by etiquette. The man assured her that everything was fine, and she should straighten her back, to which she only thanked him, assured him that they really hadn't seen each other for a long time. The prince asked not to be so formal with each other, and as he came closer, he said that the heroine had not understood or simply forgotten for such a long time, and therefore she apologized for it. At that moment, Gray himself came inside and said that 5 years had passed, and it seemed as if she had become even more beautiful and even very matured, at which point the woman pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at her old friend, saying that if he said another word, she would take it as a mockery. The man realized his mistake, raised his hands and apologized, assured that he did not mean it and he still wanted to live, so it was in no way a mockery. While he was saying this, other people came inside and began to say that the tournament was starting, and if they wanted to participate, they should come out with their weapons. At that moment, another man came inside and asked everyone to wait a moment, and after a moment he said that he knew his sister would be here. It had been so long, and he was sure that she would participate. She, in turn, immediately recognized him, and said that they had not seen each other for a long time, but she was interested in how he got here, because only aristocrats could participate. The man declared that he was no longer a commoner. He was now a baron, and the emperor granted him the surname Husky. Catching her hand, the new baron affirmed that he had promised that he would receive the title, and now he hoped that she had not forgotten his request. At this point, the prince intervened, assuring that he had not thought that the baron would be here, as he had been told that he would be busy with mercenary business, and therefore would not be able to come. The baron saw the prince and apologized for not noticing him. Perhaps it all sounded rather rude, but that he had noticed that he seemed to have good eyesight. Meanwhile, the heroine was summarizing the results of this meeting. The 3 people she wanted to ask were gathered right there, and since the emperor himself was there that night, all the knights guaranteed safety, so no one else could be in the house. There were several old nobles, the Princess of Malta, and the Duke of Grey. According to the knight who guarded the gate, the imperial carriage had left at dawn, but it was impossible to tell who was inside. The curtain blocked the view, and no one remembered Evan except her. He was a commoner, and therefore did not attract the attention of the aristocrats. The names of the others were strictly noted as they left, and that meant that one of these 3 was definitely him. At this point, the host ordered the participants to prepare by raising a gun up in the air, and the heroine realized that she had to do everything she could to find the right one, no matter what happened. The tournament started, and she walked along with Gray. The heroine realized that he never liked long conversations, but today he was too quiet. Perhaps it was because of the late Duke Doberman, and so the woman said that she had heard about his father, and so she wondered how he was. Gray said that she still cared, even though they hadn't spoken for a long time, and that was nice, to which the young mother assured him that of course she would care, because their family hadn't allowed anyone to come to the funeral, so she hadn't been able to see him. Pausing on the spot, he explained that it was his mother's decision. She just didn't want any noise in the house. Usually for funerals of important people, a whole performance was organized. A prayer for the deceased's repose was held to demonstrate the strong friendship during life. And at the end, the guests secretly made gifts to the heirs to leave a good impression. All this was done only to maintain ties with the deceased's house, and therefore death became the basis for strengthening the relationship between families. The Duchess seemed to want to sincerely wish the deceased peace, and perhaps Gray was calmer. The man assured that it happened suddenly, and so after the funeral he went back to work. Of course, he was not done with the case. The journey lasted for 5 years, and his mother seemed to be still grieving, and so he had to protect her. Listening to all this, the heroine stated that he had changed noticeably, and at that moment he changed his expression dramatically and asked if it was a compliment, to which the woman assured that it seems now he will no longer have fun with her, and the man confirmed this. He no longer has time for it. But he also added that the woman has changed a lot as well. The aristocrat became more serious, and then assured her that she had already heard, because she already had a child, at which point the man suddenly hugged her, assured her that he already knew, but it seemed that no one had seen the child, and therefore many people doubted its existence. Taking his hand away, she asked how they could go out in public in that case, if he didn't even have a father, and she was afraid that it would affect Adele. After a bit of thought, the man confirmed that she was right. It might sound like an excuse, but he honestly wanted to come as soon as he got back and found out. But his household chores did not allow him to do so. The heroine assured him that she understood everything. But Gray interrupted her at this point, saying that if she doubted him, he was ready to say it right away, namely that he was not the father of her child. And hearing this, she accepted it and assured her that she had hoped it would be him. If it had been him, it could be argued that the man who spent the night with her had no goals. But Prince was different. And if he needed her for something, and if he wanted to use her family, that case could have been planned, and that would have been horrible. This fact made the woman incredibly angry, but the man next to her claimed that he knew exactly who she suspected. But she should calm down a bit. The future was still unknown, and if she waited a bit, maybe the father of the child would show up. The heroine asked if she should just wait for him to decide to come. Pulling out her gun, she stated that he knew exactly what she had to say, namely that the heroine was a hunter, not a princess who would wait for her prince to show up. At that moment, Gray took her hands, assured her that he knew it perfectly well, but a good hunter had to understand that sometimes he had to wait for a victim, and her mother agreed with him, adding that they were on a real hunt here now, and she needed to catch something for the tournament. For her, it was quite ridiculous. She was not ready to wait quietly, because there were those she could suspect, and the more evidence she had, the faster she could uncover him, and so she would not let him escape in any case. After a few minutes, the woman felt something, and so she asked Gray to move a little, but he was in no hurry to do anything, so she repeated her question, and this time he assured her that the prey would soon come by itself, and so she should wait a little. At that moment, they felt that someone was approaching. It didn't look like some fool was trying to play a joke, and so they had to hide first. In a minute, the prey did come up to them, but it was not what they were all expecting, and there was a brown bear, and the heroine couldn't understand why he was here, because now he should be hibernating, and Gray, smiling slyly, assured that everything was as he said. The prey appeared by itself. The young mother did not understand what was going on, and whether Gray knew about the bear. He had good intuition since childhood, but now he was too confident in his abilities, when suddenly he took a cookie from his pocket and threw it on the ground, and the food immediately interested the animal. The heroine asked him what he was going to do next, and he assured her that the hungry prey was here, so they could shoot while looking at it. The beast was even bigger than they thought, and if they didn't shoot it right away, it would definitely attack, so they should wait until it turned around. There was only one chance, and she couldn't miss it. The shot was a good one, and the giant animal fell to the ground, unable to do anything else. Gray noticed that its abilities did not seem to have deteriorated at all, and the satisfied heroine asked why he was laughing, because he realized that it was her prey, and if he planned to take it for himself, he should have thought twice. He, in turn, assured her that he would never have dared to do that, and besides, he didn't really want to participate in the tournament, so she could easily take him away, which she did, and that's why she asked for help now, as she could hardly carry him by herself. Having tied him up, she was ready to move on, when suddenly Gray ordered her not to move, because there was another one behind her, and in a moment he was already attacking, intending to kill people. But at the last moment the man managed to take the attack with his sword, but it was so strong that Gray could not hold the sword, and it just flew away. The woman realized that her companion was in danger, and therefore she had to do something. She had another gun for this case, and while aiming she prayed that the man would not move. She had to concentrate, otherwise it could end very badly. At that moment, the bear turned its attention to the heroine, and leaving the man, was preparing to attack the heroine, who still could not dare to shoot. These few seconds were enough for Gray to draw his sword and stabbed the bear in the back, and in a moment, it fell dead. This time, everything went well, and the man assured her that he had killed the bear. But he was ready to give it to her, to which she was outraged, assuring her that no one would believe that he had caught it anyway, as he would not have had the strength to inflict such a wound. Then he offered to tell everyone that it was that person, that mercenary, or rather the Baron, who did it, because if Gray took full responsibility for this bear, gossip could start again. But the woman didn't understand what he was talking about, and instead suggested that he should be tied up. It looks like the one she caught was a male, and this one was a female, and then, at that moment, a bear cub came to them, and it looked like these bears were walking as a family, and they caught their parents, and he was still very small, and the woman realized that he would not be safe alone in such a large forest, and so she felt ashamed. And then Gray suggested that she take the bear with her, as its look would remind her of her child. But she could not do so, as everything in this forest was the property of the emperor, to which the man remarked that if she could win, she would probably be allowed to keep it. In this case, she asked the man to share the cookies he had taken out earlier, and when he did, the woman lured the animal to take them with him. At the finish line, she couldn't believe that Gray had won, and why he was so popular with the girls at that moment. As far as she was concerned, this walking beauty was getting too many nice words. But if someone could stand his character, they would probably make a good couple. At that moment, she was addressed, and turning around, the heroine saw the prince, who claimed that she had successfully completed the hunt. She confirmed it, assured that she now had plans to go to rest. But before that, the man wanted to be given some time. Eventually, they sat down at the table to talk over a cup of tea. The man was silent for a while, and this began to worry the heroine, as she had no idea what this conversation would be about. After a minute, the prince started talking, and immediately claimed that he and the duke had caught a brown bear at the tournament, and that the dish of bear liver and berries was a world-class delicacy. The woman was still uncomfortable, so she claimed that the bear belonged to him. After that, he asked how the future heir to the Rottweiler family was doing, and with his hand on her cheek, he waited sweetly for an answer. And the fact that the man wanted to know about Adele made the woman very nervous, so she just squeezed out the word, "fine." After that, the prince asked how old the heir was now, and after receiving the answer, he asked if it was time for him to go out into the world, realizing what he was leading to. The heroine assured him that it was not yet necessary. He was a little slow, and she would like to avoid shame, and she was also afraid that something could go wrong. But this did not scare him, and the man said that all children have the right to make mistakes, and he would understand everything. The woman wanted to answer something, but his intense gaze discouraged her from arguing, and so she assured him that she understood him, after which he began to smile and assured her that he would wait for them, as he was interested in this child. When he was finished with his questions, he noticed that she was very tired, so he asked her to rest a little, and in a moment he took her hand and kissed it, assuring her that he would be waiting for her and her son at the banquet tomorrow. As she walked back, she realized that she was not in the mood at all. She had planned to leave right away, but nothing had worked out, and besides, she had to take Adele to the ball tomorrow, and she didn't know what to do. It was too early for her to go out, and why the emperor's heir had even brought it up, because if she had known about it beforehand, they would have attended a few social events to see how she reacted, and now she would have to go blind, and she should ask her brother about the mood of the aristocracy. Suddenly, a bear cub appeared, which she successfully took with her, climbed on her lap, and the heroine noticed that he was sad, so she took him in her arms, assuring him that they would arrive soon, but it was not clear how it happened. It was already evening, and the butler was waiting for her, who was visibly shocked to see the wild beast. The heroine immediately handed it to him, telling him not to even dare to give the animal to the kitchen, as she intended to raise this bear cub. So now it was time to just put it in a cage. When she was done, the mistress asked what was going on with Adele, and was told that she was already asleep. Although she had tried to wait for her mother, she told the child that it would be late, but she was still waiting for her, and so the mother wanted to see her, even if she was asleep. On the way to the child's room, the heroine met a maid who was shocked by what she saw. She had heard that the lady had caught a brown bear, but it seemed that it had also rubbed her, so the maid immediately took off her outer clothes, asking her to take a bath in the meantime, especially since everything was already ready. The woman realized that Adele was already asleep, but she should not go to him like that, so she agreed. She was glad to finally be able to relax a little. Today she noticed that Gray had changed, and it was hard to find anything familiar about him. It had been maybe 5 years since his father died, but she thought it was something else entirely, and so she hoped that nothing serious had happened. Suddenly, she saw Adele's rubber duck in front of her, and then realized that she still had to decide what to dress the child in. She would like to avoid this banquet. She could ask for the help of mercenaries and go north. No one would find them there. It would be possible because Evan was very kind, but she immediately repelled the thought, convinced that it was all very stupid. Suddenly, they started calling her, assuring her that there was a trouble, to which the lady asked what could have happened at such a late hour, to which she was told that Adele was nowhere to be found. The heroine instantly dressed and went to look for the child together with the servants throughout the estate. She checked every room, but she was nowhere to be found. The child seemed to have fallen through the ground, and no one knew if she was still in the house, and the woman did not understand why she was there, and right now. Right at that moment, she began to think about the prince. But in a moment she pushed those thoughts away, assuring herself that she was worrying in vain, as he had no reason to steal her child. But that sudden interest caused her to be uneasy. There were gossips that the imperial family had a secret order of knights, and if Adele had really been taken by the prince, what could she do? The heroine was desperate from this news and did not know what she should do next. At that moment she was met by her mother, who asked her to get up from the floor, to which the woman decided to ask her what to do. What to do if the prince did take her away, because he asked about her today at the tournament. A person who knew nothing about Adele suddenly asked to bring her to the banquet. It was very strange. The older woman took her daughter's hands, asking her to calm down, as her father and brother had already checked the child's room, and there were no signs of a break-in, which meant she must be at home, because she was always restless, just like her mother, and so there was no need to worry so much. At that moment, one of the maids came running to them, claiming that Adele had been found, and when she found out, she ordered her to take her immediately to the child. Going up to the second floor, in one of the rooms, the child was already sleeping in his brother's arms, thus calming the heroine. She immediately asked where her daughter was all the time, and her husband assured her that she was in the kitchen warehouse, where they used to raise sheep when they were children, and the woman's hysterical state slowly subsided. They had been looking for her for so long, but what happened today made her even more worried. Hearing these sounds, Adele woke up, to which the woman immediately claimed that the child had promised her not to go anywhere, but had not said anything, to which she uncertainly claimed that she had heard someone screaming, pointing to the bear cub in the cage, calling for his mother and crying. He was very sad, and so Adele decided to stay with him. The heroine was a little shocked by this, because if the child spoke to him, it turned out that he was something like an imaginary friend. After realizing the whole situation, the young mother said that he would be fine now, and it was late, so they should go to bed. At that moment, her brother approached her, saying that she would be busy preparing for the banquet tomorrow, and therefore it was necessary to decide something with Adele, which meant that they needed to discuss everything now. After putting the baby to bed, they went to a free room, where their dialogue began. The man claimed that he had heard that she was planning to take Adele with her, and their common mother had asked him to go with them. The heroine confirmed this, saying that she was worried, and for some reason the prince was suddenly interested in the child. It could turn out that he was Adele's real father, but the woman would not want her to become a princess. The heroine was on the road to hysteria again, when suddenly her brother slammed on the table, asking her to calm down and listen to him. Now the prince was not in the best position. Explaining, he asked if she knew the story of Prince Rodan, to which she assured him that everyone in their empire had heard the story. The emperor had 2 brides, the empress and the first concubine. The empress could not get pregnant for a long time, and so His Majesty Theron, the son of the concubine, became a prince. But 15 years ago, miraculously, the empress had Rodan, and so the situation changed. The prince's position is becoming more and more unstable, but still so far he has kept the title of prince. But at any moment he can lose it. Prince Rodan, since the age of 5, has been successfully creating new suites. But no matter how much he claims to be a claimant to the throne, his abilities were excellent, and so Theron needs to be careful. He noticed that the situation was heating up. The emperor tried to keep his heir in check, and Theron was sent out of the capital under the pretext of inspecting the territories. And of course, the prince did not like it. The heroine assured that she understood the fact that the prince wants to protect his position. But she was wondering how it was connected with Adele, to which the brother explained that it was worth thinking. The prince had not been in the capital for 5 years. He had become distant from everyone, and his connections in the aristocracy had weakened. And so if he wanted to keep his position, he needs a lot of support from the society. And the relationship with their family can give him a strong support. And if she and Adele are on his side, then her family will certainly have to stand up for him. His brother was sure that tomorrow he would behave as if it were his child. But no one knew the truth. And it didn't matter now. Tomorrow at the banquet, the young mother would have to do something to convince him that she knew who the real father was. They could even say it was Duke Doberman. They had been in contact with his family for a long time, and everyone knew of their long friendship, so there would be no suspicion. And Adele had been told in advance that she should be friendly with the Duke. In response, the woman assured her that Gray had made it clear that it was not his child, but that it was not so important now, because they were not going to make an official statement. And even if the prince was indeed her father, her brother simply could not watch them being dragged into his political goals, and it was all for her and their family. The next day, the mother and her maids were preparing Adele for a banquet, and while dressing her in a man's suit, the woman assured her that any clothes would suit her, although she realized that she would be even more beautiful in a dress. But even so, the heroine loved the child very much. The child was sincerely happy to hear this, and in response assured that her mother was also very beautiful, like a princess from a fairy tale. At which point the maid said that Duke Doberman would soon arrive, and the lady ordered that he be told to come to her room, and she and Adele were ready. Later, they all gathered in the room, and after a bit of silence, Gray said that it was all sad. She was usually bold and preferred a direct approach, but for some reason she had been hiding it for so long. These words angered the woman, and she asked to just stand silently. She didn't understand whether this man was really going to accompany her to the banquet, but after a moment she accepted it, assured that he was only talking and could. Suddenly the mother noticed a bruise on the child's arm, and this surprised her, as she had no idea when and how it had gotten there. The child saw this reaction and asked what was wrong, but the heroine did not show it, assured that everything was fine, and in a moment, she said that she would add something else to make the girl look even cuter. And then she hung a berry brooch on her. Adele was delighted and asked what it was, to which her mother explained that it was a dotberry berry, reminding her of yesterday's bear cub. He was a brown dotberry bear. Such bears loved these berries, and therefore got the name. The child asked uncertainly if they were tasty, to which the woman, after a little thought, said that she did not know, as she had not tried them either. These berries grew everywhere, but usually they were eaten by commoners in times of famine. All the while Gray was waiting impatiently, and after these explanations he said that if they were ready, it was time to go. Later, they arrived at the banquet hall, and just before entering, the attendant asked if she was okay, to which the woman assured him that she was fine, but then corrected herself and said that even if she wasn't, it wasn't his fault, and in a moment, they went inside. As they entered, everyone immediately began to pay attention to the new guests, and after walking a little forward, Gray asked that if something did happen, she should call him and not leave all the problems to herself, after which he left her, and then the mother turned to the child, assuring her that she should be with her and her grandmother today, as she should not be left alone or run away, to which she cheerfully agreed. Suddenly, the heroine began to hear them being discussed. People wondering if this child was really a Rottweiler, and if he was the heir to this family, that he was the one who was gossiped about. Everyone thought he was being hidden because of something important, but there was nothing special. These conversations made the woman unusually angry. She expected something like this to happen, She was prepared, but still. At that moment, Evan suddenly appeared behind her, lightly hugged his sister. It shocked her, and she immediately pulled away, wondering why he was here. The man assured that he was now a baron, so he could come, and she in turn was just beautiful tonight. The woman said that she always felt like he still didn't like such events, despite his higher status. Responding to this statement, Evan decided to bring his charm, and therefore assured that this was the only way he could see the beautiful heroine, which is why he was here, adding in a second that he thought she was cute in any clothes. At that moment, the cheerful child turned to his mother, and seeing the unknown man, shyly hid behind her, the woman assured him that he did not know the child yet, and therefore, looking at Evan with a stern look, introduced him as her sweet son. The man took the hint and played along, assuring her that he was handsome, just like her. And in a moment he got down on one knee and introduced himself to her, to which Adele politely greeted her, and her mother assured him that he could be called Uncle Evan, as he had always helped her a lot. To try to get closer to her, the man took her hands, told her not to be afraid, as they had just met. But he had already seen how good he was, and after a moment asked if she wanted to play with him sometime. They could go horseback riding. The heroine, hearing this, hastily began to dissuade the child, assuring him that they could get hurt, and therefore only after 10 years, to which Evan noticed that he would have to wait. But Adele did not mind. After a moment, the child noticed the horse, at which point she began to whisper in his ear, and finally asked if it was a promise, to which the man assured her that there was nothing to worry about, and they would definitely do it. And then the mother asked what they were talking about, to which the daughter quietly said that it was a secret. This reaction shocked the woman. She was the one who raised the child, but the child turned away from her so easily, and in a moment someone announced that everyone had arrived, and the heroine immediately recognized him. Looking around, she saw the prince at the entrance, apologizing for being late. For a moment they met her eyes, where she saw his sly smile, and then she asked the child to come to her, realizing that for everything to go well, she had to keep the child in her sight and not let him go anywhere. The prince sat down in his special place, and in a moment, the heroine came up to him, along with the child, and after they exchanged greetings, she introduced her son, and in a moment, she asked him to introduce himself. Smiling cheerfully, the child introduced himself as Adelweiss Lou Rothweller, and he was happy to meet the crown prince, and evil gossip immediately began around him. People smiled because they dared to approach the prince. The man said that he was very nice, and so he asked to come closer, and after the mother's permission, the child ran to the prince, and as they got closer, the prince said that he seemed very smart, and it was not surprising, because he looked like him, especially with his eyes and nose, and so he asked the mother if she thought so too. She immediately realized that it was all nonsense, the nose, the eyes, not a drop of resemblance, and he was just putting his plan into action. Meanwhile, the man remarked that it must be hard to raise a child alone, to which she only calmly thanked him, realizing that she should be very careful, otherwise there would be a big trouble. As the crown prince rose, he assured her that he could not have imagined that it was like this, and if he had known about this wonderful child, he would have acted sooner, to which the mother assured him that his words of sympathy were enough, and Adele was very happy. He was strong in spirit, just like the prince, and his mind was like his father's, a real angel, and she sometimes thought that this child was sent to her by God. Hearing this, the prince sweated a bit, and then confirmed that it was indeed a beautiful child, and he made her proud. The woman noticed that he looked more like his father than her, and then began to point at him. The highest aristocrat angrily looked where she was pointing, and there people all turned their attention to Gray, whom she called the boy's father. The Duke always looked so indifferent. She wanted to officially introduce him, the son with the Duke. But how could he know? They had a grief in their family, and so they postponed it, for which they apologized. Gritting his teeth, the prince assured him that he understood, and then with a look of desperation, he said that they shouldn't stay, and therefore could go. The heroine thanked him for the invitation, as it was a useful experience for the child, and after a moment asked him to say goodbye as well, and Adele, still smiling cheerfully, thanked him for the time they had taken. When she finished, she went downstairs to the guests, where her child's foster father was waiting for her. and he immediately said that if they were done, it was time to go eat. And the child, hearing this, ran up cheerfully to the Duke, and he thought a little, took Adele in his arms, teaching him that if he was hungry, he should always speak up, and they would ask for something to be prepared. After that, they left together, and the prince, looking at their backs, angrily slammed the table. They looked like a real family, and this ruined all his plans. In a minute, they were all at the table, and Adele still cheerfully wished everyone a good appetite. A little shy, the heroine thanked Gray, to which he assured that it was not bad to hear such words. But it was strange, since he did not understand what this gratitude was for, and she uncertainly said that it was just like that, for everything. Adele was the first to notice him, and immediately cheerfully called him uncle, and when everyone turned around, they saw Evan, who came closer, said that they had decided to have a snack, and asked if he could join them, since he hadn't eaten anything yet. He came closer. He said it was amazing. He had said earlier that he had come here just to meet her, and he wondered how she could leave him like that. And she apologized, as she had to do something. But the man did not think to get angry, as he did not come here to apologize. The next moment, he asked something strange, namely if the wig could spend the night with them, as he wanted to talk about something, and the woman hesitantly agreed. And then Gray also asked in a similar way. Such statements confused the young mother, and she asked them what had come over them. The men looked at each other, and she realized that there was a very heavy atmosphere around. Evening came, and they went home, where the butler was waiting in front of the mansion, who was visibly surprised to see them all, and the woman only assured them with a heavy exhalation that the two would spend the night with them, and therefore ordered the guest room to be prepared. Once inside, the woman asked Evan to take the child to the room, and then began to describe how to get there, and he listened without asking, looking at his back. The heroine was glad that Evan was there, because Adele needed someone she could trust. She was already sleeping peacefully in his arms, which meant that she was comfortable with him. After that, she said goodnight to Gray, claimed that she would take him to his room, and after thinking about it for a while, he suddenly came up behind her and took her in his arms, apologizing for it. This behavior angered the lady, and she immediately swung to strike him, but was immediately reassured that everyone was already asleep, and he would simply take her to her room, so there was nothing to be afraid of, and so she had no choice but to obey. He saw the wounds on her legs, so he asked her not to torture herself, and now, when she was in his arms, she realized that he was able to lift 2 bears, so she didn't weigh anything for him. It was so unusual. Suddenly, Evan appeared in front of them and immediately asked why she was in the arms of this man, to which Gray explained that she had injured her legs, and that he was helping her. They looked at each other for a moment, after which he smiled cheerfully, assuring her that she should have said so right away, and that he would also help, and next time they should tell him. The woman in his arms was getting more and more uncomfortable with these conversations, and the man continued to explain that he was very worried about Adele, and therefore did not notice the wound, but next time he would be more attentive. He of course knew that she was tired, but he could not even think about it. After leading her into the room, both men said goodbye sweetly, and then left the room, and the heroine fell on the bed with relief. She thought she was going to fall right there, but now the excitement has receded a little. Meanwhile, in the palace, the prince was sitting on the couch while the maid took care of his hands, when he suddenly said that she was a fox, to which the maid, in fear, confirmed it, after which he added that it would be stupid to back down because of the insult, because a fox would not make a good dish. But still its fur could be used as decoration, although a lot of time would be wasted for hunting, and this annoyed him. Suddenly he stood up, then hit the maid in front of him, saying that he did not want to give the girl the title of princess, but it was still necessary, and then asked if he was right, and the prince was addressing the man sitting next to him, and it was Count Gallic. The prince asked him if she received the title, how he would get rid of her, because sooner or later he would not need the girl, and the count stood up and assured him that he would find a way, and then left the room. Theron knew that if he wanted the throne, he had to win, but he wasn't sure if he could defeat Rodan, whom everyone cared about so much, and yet it was worth checking. He was angry, and he couldn't understand why he had to go through such a test to take the throne, but he had to try, and from that moment on, the fox hunt began. The next day, the heroine was walking with Adele, and she asked where they were going today, and the heroine assured her that they were going to a place where there were a lot of her favorite sweets. Eating at home was good, but sometimes it would be nice to eat somewhere else. A lot of different sweets, pies, and cakes were put in front of the child, and he could hardly resist trying them. Looking at all this, the child was very curious about what it was, and the mother explained that it was a chocolate fountain. It was made in a bakery, and later they would try it. In the meantime, she began to worry why he wasn't there yet, because it was already time. And as if hearing her, Gray himself appeared and asked if she had already ordered. The woman confirmed it, saying that he would probably have coffee, as he looked somehow tired. Suddenly, they heard a scream and turned around to see a dirty Adele with tears streaming down her face. She was apologizing, but the woman was not angry. Instead, she went to wipe her daughter. The handkerchief she pulled out attracted Gray's attention, and he asked where she was from. He was interested in a particular flower that was painted on it. It was a dotberry berry, and it interested him. At that moment, the seller appeared and called her Madam, asked if she was okay, assured her that he would bring another handkerchief. The woman thanked him, and only a moment later realized that she was called Madam. Gray remembered most of the evening in the manor where the heroine's coming-of-age ceremony took place 5 years ago. But still, the next morning he was shocked. He woke up naked in bed, but he didn't know how it happened. He didn't remember anything, and because of the alcohol, everything was swimming now, and he didn't understand how he could have done such a thing. Near his bed, he saw that handkerchief. It had a red flower on it, and it seemed to be a woman's cloth. So he hurriedly threw on his clothes and left the house, because the man was not in a state to think reasonably. And if it was her? In the meantime, the employee came with a new handkerchief, and the child took it, and then cheerfully handed it to her mother. But she was still confused by what she was called. She convinced herself that she was called that only because she was already with a child. In society, everyone used the address Lady Rottweiler, and apparently it was such a mockery, because there was a child and still no husband. And then suddenly, Madame, it was completely unexpected. Suddenly, Gray pulled her out of her thoughts, telling her that she was thinking too much, that he could understand everything. But she had to wait a little longer, and he was definitely going to show up soon. But she didn't know when. She had waited long enough, and how long it would take. Later, they sat down to tea, and after tea, Adele happily said that the cake was delicious, and Gray again plunged into thinking that if this child could really be his, then the abilities of the Doberman family were truly amazing. A family that didn't want to share its knowledge with anyone else kept to itself. This family kept its secrets very much. A family member who found a person dear to his heart would never leave him, and they would definitely raise only one child together. And if he was a father, he had to take responsibility, which meant that he should be checked. Having finished, they began to say goodbye in the carriage, when suddenly the man asked to wait, and taking Adele in his arms, assured that he was also with them. The heroine asked why, and in response was asked if he would be forbidden to do so, after which they left together, and the woman thought that he was strange today. When he arrived, the mother and child went out, and Gray stayed inside. He realized that he couldn't start acting right now. It wasn't safe to make his move right away. He couldn't even hug Adele, and now he had to do something else. Later, he returned home, and when he appeared in the main hall, his mother asked if the preparations had gone well, and upon receiving confirmation, she said that they had to catch him, because now her son was the Duke of Doberman, and therefore led the family. Clenching his fist, Gray firmly assured her that he would definitely find the person who had poisoned his father, and she just had to wait a little longer. She agreed, adding that he would definitely not have done it himself, and she could not forgive such a crime, and therefore could only trust her son. Standing in front of the giant door, the son realized that this was an office where only the Duke could enter, and he unlocked the door. The man went inside, and the first thing he felt was that it was cold. It was here that his father died. It was announced that he died of a heart attack caused by overwork, but the true cause was poison. There was some strangeness here. They were taught from childhood to avoid death and to protect themselves. They even tried poison to develop invulnerability. For the sake of preserving the family's strength, the descendants of Doberman tortured themselves over and over again, They and their father were resistant to most poisons, which meant that some little-known poison killed him. The criminal was careful, and they didn't notice the poison. Not many people could come up with such a plan, which meant that it was probably the plan of the imperial family, but they still had no reason to attack them. Her family had long played the role of the watchdogs of the empire, and so the emperor himself had no reason to kill his father. But still, Rodan, he was young but smart, although he also didn't need to do that to his family, who had never interfered in his affairs, so there was only Prince Theron. Suddenly, Gray called for the butler, and when he arrived, he ordered that all the carriages be reported to him 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening. Even if it was just the coachman or the gardener, let them keep an eye on everyone. He knew that the criminal would not be satisfied with just the old duke, and he would definitely try to poison him, and therefore it was worth provoking. But until then, he had to wait. The heroine was lying in the manor early in the morning thinking about Gray. He was somehow strange. She couldn't say what exactly it was, but she and him used to spend a lot of time together, so it's hard for him to hide something from her. And if he's keeping a secret, then maybe... She shoved these thoughts out of her head, because he had already said that he was not the father. But still, his words in the forest could have been a lie. But she was sure that she would have noticed if he and Adele had similarities. So now she didn't even know for sure. Suddenly, a maid came into the room, claiming that they had guests. The heroine was visibly surprised who could come so early, to which the maid said that it was Baron Husky. She had not yet eaten, and therefore he was taken to the guest room. She did not know why Evan began to come so often, and therefore said that she would be down in a moment, while ordering them to prepare food. Adele was bored playing alone. Of course she couldn't let them go for a horseback ride, but for a regular one. When Evan came down, he greeted her cheerfully as always. There was already a child with him having fun, and she told him that she and her uncle were playing. The man assured her that he came down immediately when he arrived. The mother reminded her that yesterday Adele said he had a good feeling, and it seems he was right. So taking his hand, she said they were going to eat, and a moment later she invited her uncle to join them. The heroine saw that Adele was very happy. They looked like a real family, but for some reason she felt like she was suffocating. Sitting down at the table, the hostess asked him in a serious tone if something had happened if he had come so early, to which he assured her that there was no reason, and he just wanted to play with her. She had been so busy lately, and so she needed to be distracted. The woman thanked him for this care. He was a strong protector. They could roam freely in the alleys, and she felt as if she were at home. But now she could no longer behave so carelessly, and she needed to protect, and not her freedom-loving Adele. But Adele, she could not do something like that again. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a guest who assured her that he understood roughly what she was thinking. But the heroine was thinking too much about his proposal. It seemed that it was exactly like that. But she shouldn't be afraid, as she would definitely enjoy this entertainment. The woman said she didn't even know what Evan was talking about, and he offered her a guess, which was the most pleasant thing for her. And after a little thought, she suddenly stood up and asked in a raised tone if he was talking about the shooting, and the man confirmed it, showing the tickets in front of him. The heroine was delighted with this, and at that moment the child asked what shooting was, and Evan explained, since his mother had already told him about her weapons. But there were other types, but those guns made it easier to destroy targets in the air. In her thoughts, the mistress noticed that despite such a loud name, her weapon was used mainly for hunting pigeons, at which point Adele expressed his deep desire to watch his mother shoot, but she did not think it would be a good idea, and then Evan intervened, assuring that Adele was already an adult, and at 5 years old he could go after a wild boar.